Hello YouTube, Sidekick here with another installment of Su-25, the DCS Gateway Drug. This time we're going back out to the range to get acquainted with that most quintessential of Russian weapons, the rocket. So, while we take off and get ourselves flown out to the range, let's talk a little bit about the history of using rockets from aircraft. Now, the US and NATO have been using rockets for a long time, probably back to World War I, and certainly extensively in World War II. The rockets used in World War II and just thereafter were fairly large caliber affairs. But since the 1960s, NATO has basically converged on the 2.75-inch rocket as the main unguided rocket that it uses from various platforms. You will find it available to equip many of the different planes in DCS. And while you can always find it in a variety of launchers and with a variety of warheads, the basic rocket is always the 2.75-inch version. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it. In fact, I have a family history with this weapon, as my father actually helped develop a version known as the CRV-7, or Anamiki, if you're Canadian, which is still in use today. But it has to be said that while NATO air forces have always had the rocket in their arsenal, it has not really been a weapon of choice. For the Russians, on the other hand, they have definitely raised rocketry to a science. The Soviets were, of course, famous for the Katyusha or Stalin's Oregon rocket system in the Second World War, and ever since, Soviet artillery has always featured a lot of multiple launch rocket systems. But the Soviets didn't restrict their use of rockets to their ground-based artillery. In the air, too, the Soviets developed and deployed a wide variety of self-propelled unguided projectiles in sizes ranging from 50 millimeters up to 340 millimeters, including some that deliver payloads as large as standard iron bombs. So let's look at the variety of rockets that we're taking out to the range today. On the outer pylons, we have two multiple launchers of S-8 rockets. These are roughly the equivalent of the NATO 2.75-inch rockets. They're 80 millimeters. And each launcher holds 20 rockets, so we have a total of 40. All of them are equipped with a 5-kilogram blast fragmentation warhead, and they have a maximum range of around 3 kilometers. The next inner pylons are equipped with S-13 rockets in 5-tube launchers. These are 122 millimeter rockets that are roughly equivalent to the US Zuni rockets of the Vietnam era. Each of the S-13s delivers a warhead of roughly equivalent to a 122 millimeter artillery round. Today we're using fragmentation warheads, but it comes with a penetration warhead as well that is designed to penetrate up to a meter of concrete or even to crater runways. Now these are the relatively small caliber rockets. On the inner pylons we move to the heavy artillery. First we have the S-24 rockets on the next two pylons. The S-24 is a 240 millimeter rocket weighing 235 kilograms. And delivering a payload of 125 kilograms, or roughly the equivalent of a Mark 82 bomb. Only it can be delivered from approximately 3 kilometers away. The final set of two rockets are the truly massive S-25 rockets. These are 340 millimeters in diameter, deliver a payload of 190 kilograms, which is more or less equivalent to a Mark 83 bomb. It comes with a blast fragmentation warheads, including proximity fused variant, that is designed to deliver airbursts. We're just using the basic fragmentation warhead today, though. The S-25 has a range of almost 2 kilometers. Okay, well, all of that has given us enough time to get out to the range and also to do our trim run over the range. If you haven't seen that procedure before, I'll be explaining a little bit more in an upcoming video in the Iron Bomber's Guide to the Galaxy series. It's basically a chance to get ourselves set up before we actually start doing target runs on the range. So now we're going around in our range pattern. We're going to go up to about 3,000 meters, actually maybe a little bit less than that for the first one, because the S-8s are kind of a strafing rocket, so we're going to deploy them at kind of a shallow angle. So you can see we're just abeam the target range now. We're going to start our turn in here in a sec once we're established on altitude, somewhere around there. So we'll start turning around to find our initial point. So yeah, we're going to deploy the S-8s from a fairly low angle so we can try and cover the entire target area with the 40 rockets. So the other thing I should say about today is we're actually going to do 2 sorties out to the range. We're going to do a first sortie here where we just fire the rockets at the range and see how they perform. But then we're going to go back and rearm and come out again and take a look at the actual effectiveness of the rockets at some targets. On the small target range, we have some unarmored vehicles set up so we can see just how effective the rockets are. So here we are turning in. And there's our pipper coming up. So since the rockets have a range, we need to watch that thick bar on the right. When the little thin arc begins overlapping the thick bar, we should get a launch light, and we fire. And so we fired those at pretty close to the maximum range. And as you can see, they pretty much covered that 50-meter target. All right, so we'll automatically now have switched to the S-13 rockets. We'll go around again. So yeah, you can see that we'll see when we get the pipper up again. You basically have a thick bar on the right-hand side and a thin bar underneath it. And as the thin arc begins to overlap with the thick bar, it also starts to disappear. And once that starts to happen, it means we're in range. And once the thick bar has disappeared, it means we're inside the minimum range and we can no longer launch. And of course, we get the orange launch light on the right-hand side at the bottom just to confirm that it's good to launch. So we're up a little higher this time. We'll approach at a little bit higher angle. And again, the advantage of using the rockets over bombs is to give you a little bit of standoff and also hopefully to allow you to launch from higher altitude. So that's what we're trying to practice here a little bit today, is to show that we can actually deliver an effect from a higher altitude and stay away from the point defense, the AAA, and hopefully the IR missiles in a target area. So we're coming down a little bit steeper. Let's see what altitude we can launch at here. And there we go. And once again, pretty good coverage on the target. And we're pulled off and up, at 1,500 meters, which is pretty good height. All right, so let's go around again, and this time we'll break out the big guns, and we'll launch the S-24s. So just to avoid a situation where we have an asymmetric load, I'm going to launch both of them, although that will require 2 trigger pulls in order to launch the 2 S-24s. And now you can see we're up even a little bit higher here. And we'll see just how high up we can launch these big boys. All right, rolling in. So let's watch that ring start to roll back in. Get the pipper up to the target at about the right point and launch. And launch. Okay, 2 pretty good strikes. If those were Mark 82 bombs, we'd be pretty happy with that. And again, that's about the equivalent of what we're talking about here. And we pulled off nice and high and actually barely overflew the target. So I think we achieved our objective of some standoff there. Okay, for the last run, we're going to fire the S-25s this time. You can see them on the inner pylon there. We can actually see our target again here. There we go, break through the clouds a little bit. So once again, we're up nice and high. And the idea is that although, we're firing these to the point, these very much are an area weapon. They're a big blast fragmentation. So the S-25s in particular are not meant to be bunker busters. These are meant to be rockets you would use against soft-skin vehicles or troop concentrations. Getting ourselves nice and lined up there. And let's roll in. Pipper's on screen. See, we get a relatively smaller window when we can launch these, but it should be plenty of time. Get the Pipper up, get our speed brakes on this time. And hold it there while we wait for us to come in range. There it is, and there we go. And we're pulling up and off. And once again, pretty good hits. Okay, now that we've had a little bit of practice, let's go back to base and arm up again with the same loadout. And we'll go back up to the range, but this time we're going to concentrate on the three smaller targets on the range, which actually have some soft-skin vehicles around them. The first target, I think, also has an unprotected anti-aircraft gun. But we're just basically going to see what effect the rockets have. So once again, we're doing the trim run over the range. This time we're doing it over the 3-target range. And then we'll go up and around and do our standard range pattern. So one thing to note with the S8 rockets and the S13s as well, unlike some of the launchers in other aircraft you might be familiar with, there is no option to fire anything less than a full salvo. Once you press the trigger, you hold it down until they're all gone. There is no option to fire them either singly or in pairs or any of that sort of thing. So we're going to drop the entire load of S8s on the first circle. It's a 25-meter circle, and it has vehicles around it. So basically, we'll get a chance to see what kind of destruction we can wreak in a sort of a 25-meter area with a full load of S8 rockets. All right, coming to beam the target, getting ourselves sorted out. Once again, we'll come in fairly low and from a little ways back so that we get a nice wide pattern for the rockets. And we'll start our turn in here. There you get a nice view of the loadout there. Okay, so we're coming around. We're far enough out here. Good altitude. I think it'll make for a nice kind of strafing style run. Same procedure as last time. Once we get the Pipper up, we need to get the dot over the target, and then we need to wait for the range rings to coincide. We'll get our orange light, and away we go. As always, our objective is to fire from as far back as we can to maintain standoff and altitude. So here we go, rolling in. We're almost in range already. So get the Pipper up to the target anytime. Okay, so we're probably a little closer than we could have been. A little bit of practice will make better. And we pretty much covered that target again. So at that angle and distance, full load of S8s basically covers a 25-meter circle. And it looks like we got some hits on some of the vehicles as well. Yeah, you can see that even the ones that aren't destroyed, we've done a fair bit of damage to when we look at them in the F10 view. So fair to say that the S8s are pretty dangerous to soft-skin vehicles, even in an area as big as 25 meters, probably even a little bit larger. But they're probably not going to do much against any hardened target. Now, there are heat warheads available, but of course the rocket would actually have to hit the vehicle. So, as you probably know if you've used the 2.75-inch NATO version, not really the weapon of choice if you're trying to take out a precise target, but certainly good at suppressing an area, as we just found out. So let's see how much more damage we can do now with the larger caliber rockets. So these are the S13s, the 122 millimeter rockets. I'm going to fire them at that same target. Just see if we can't finish off everything around that circle. So once again, we actually could have started from farther back. And there we go. Yeah, you can see we immediately got some kills on some of the vehicles. Now, some of those are already damaged from the S8s, but as you can see, the S13s look like they're just a little bit more deadly. And again, they're more than capable of taking out vehicles that are as much as 20 or 25 meters from the impact point. So that gives you some idea of their lethality, again, at least against soft-skin vehicles. So now we're breaking out the big artillery. We're going to try the S-24s. We're going to fire at the second target. This one, again, just has soft-skin vehicles around it because this is the blast fragmentation version. And we'll fire 2. And it took a little bit longer to get close than I wanted to, so not much standoff there. Well, now both of those hit in the middle of the target, but don't seem to have killed anything around the outside, which is maybe a little bit disappointing given the size of the warhead. Now, again, this may, look at that, really didn't do much damage at all. So that may be an artifact of the way DCS treats that rocket, but you should be aware of that. You may not want to be using the S-24s if you're looking for a lot of area effect, obviously. A little bit hard to figure out how good they'd be against hardened targets. Maybe we can do some tests to figure that out. But right now, not an impressive display in terms of lethality against soft-skin vehicles. So this time we're going to use the S-25s. We might as well go back and just to take out that same target, see if they are any better as an area denial weapon here. And there's the roll in. Also see if we can get them a little bit more of a standoff. That last round was not particularly good. Okay, get ourselves rolled in and lined up. The Pipper back up to the target in time. It's a bit better run. There's the light. There go the rockets. Oh, and you can see that we immediately got some kills with those rockets, although they weren't quite in the center. So, but certainly off the top of my head, it looks to me like the S-25s are a lot more effective against those soft-skin vehicles. So let's just turn around and go back down over the range, take a look at what we have wrought. Always good to see the effects of our hard work. So I think, as you can see on the first circle, the destruction is reasonably comprehensive. And on the second circle, pretty good as well. So out of that, I would say that the S8's not bad. I'd probably go for the S13s if I was going to use a smaller rocket, just because I think they seem to actually destroy things. The S-24 is pretty disappointing against soft-skin vehicles, honestly. For a warhead that size, I would have expected a little bit more effect, but there may be something I'm missing. The S-25s, on the other hand, seem to live up to expectations. So take that for what you will. Once again, if you enjoyed this video and if it's helping you learn to cope with the Su-25, the DCS Gateway Drug, please like and subscribe. But for now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.